Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, the podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. I'm very excited to be partnering with Bioptimizers to bring you guys an awesome new product. Capex helps you digest fat, which we all know is so important on a carnivore or meat-based diet. There are many well-researched benefits to having good fat in your diet. I think it's an essential part of carnivore to make sure you're getting enough fat, not just jamming down protein. But the problem is with too much fat and without proper digestive enzymes and key nutrients, the fat just sits in your stomach and creates a traffic jam. For me, this made me bloated, made me up all night with indigestion. You can feel sluggish, low energy. Undigested fats pass through your GI tract, so you can get greasy, fatty stools, constipation, fatty liver, etc. But Bioptimizers has created an awesome new digestive product called Capex, which is specifically great for carnivore. It helps in a few key ways. One is it can help rev up your cellular metabolism and boosting your energy and your capacity to burn fat as fuel. It also helps your body build new cells on a carnivore diet. And lastly, it can give you really strong focused energy. So I don't recommend taking it past 5 p.m. or so, because it can just wake you up without any stimulants, which is pretty awesome. So I highly suggest you check it out. I had a great podcast with one of the founders and CEO of Bioptimizers, Matt Gallant. If you want to check it out, you can go to kenergize.com/carnivorecast to get a discount. That's KENERGIZE.com/carnivorecast, one word. And you'll automatically get 10% off any package of Capex with coupon code carnivorecast10. It's all one word at checkout. That's kenergize.com/carnivorecast. And hope you guys enjoy. Justin G at alloutlife.carnivore on Instagram is a MeatRx coach. Has been carnivore for over 2 years to help relieve anxiety, depression, migraines, chronic pain, digestive issues, and sinus infections. He's passionate about helping people, and he specializes in addiction management. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a beautiful day, and it's great to be here on the Carnivore Cast. So it's really awesome. It's really cool how tight-knit the carnivore community is that you'll listen to somebody in a month, and then you're on the show the next month, which is pretty cool, actually. There's a lot of opportunities like that in other spheres of influence. So greatly appreciate the opportunity. But yeah, as stated, I've been carnivore since April of 2019. It actually started with a really bad rear end car crash when I was still living in California at the time. Basically had an SUV in my back seat. That's how bad it was. My lawyer had stated that it was the worst rear end he had seen in his 20-year career or something like that. So pretty gnarly. But to roll the clock back a bit, so I'd been sick since a child, and not just sick in the head like I am now. Genuinely relatively sick, constantly missing school due to throat infections, or this infection or that infection, sinus infections, as you had mentioned. But what had really hit me is when I was 20 years old, I got hit with chronic severe migraines that were daily, that made life very, very difficult, very, very hard. You're 20, you're a 20-year-old male. You want to go out there and start conquering the world, starting college, getting career going, getting the life started, right? And here I am in bed with lights off in severe pain, like every other day. Now it does run in my family. And so I knew what it was relatively quickly. I went and got in to see a neurologist fairly quickly. But they just give you the triptans, right? So I got on Maxalt, and I know us in the community, we're all about root cause healing, or what's the root cause. And my neurologist, she was cool and everything, but Maxalt doesn't solve the problems. It takes away the pain, but anyone that's ever taken migraine medication, you're pretty much still not functional, because it just kind of knocks you out. You're not supposed to drive when you take it. You get kind of nauseous. I remember I had pins and needles tingling on my tongue and up, down different parts of my body. And so it's just all these weird reactions, which are almost just as bad as the migraine, because you're still not functional, which puts you in a really interesting predicament as a migrainer, because you're instructed to take the migraine medication as soon as the migraine hits, or as soon as you feel pain. But because of the side effects from the medication, making it to where you're pretty much not functional anyway, many of us, or pretty much all people that have migraines, end up taking the medication when the migraine is unbearable. Not when it's too late, it'll still help, but to where it's not going to be as effective because you're waiting so long to take it. But if the choice is whether it be just in a lot of pain and not functional, or be completely knocked out and have all these weird other sensations and be non-functional, honestly, it's better to just have pain that you can kind of deal with, at least until you're done with what you're doing, then take the medication and go pass out. Basically, is the life of a migrainer on typical medications. The relevancy for that is after the car accident, the migraines greatly flared up. I had them more or less under control with being paleo, as well as taking many different supplements, fish oils, 5-HTP, magnesium, coenzyme Q10. She had me on a whole bunch of different stuff. And I was getting them, but I was getting them about once a week, which I know still sounds like, how are you still living your life that way? But compared to daily migraines, once a week is manageable. I know when they're gonna hit. I could work a job, I could go to school and things like that, and not miss too many days compared to before, when without a change in diet and without all the different supplementation. But after the accident, that remedy was no longer working. And like many people, I turned to the internet to see what else is up there. Ended up on Amazon looking at books, and I found Angela Statton's book, Curing the Migraine Epidemic. I got her book. I entered her Facebook group. And what's really funny, the way I came to Carnivore was that in her Facebook group, there were people that were talking about ZC and CD, right? Which terms we are all familiar with now. But when you're barely in this world, you have no idea what people are talking about. And so I asked, I was like, what is ZC? What is CD? What is this? What are people doing? Can I do it? They're like, oh, it's the carnivore diet or zero carb. And I was like, oh, I know what that is, because being in the psychology field, I follow, Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson. So I'd actually heard about the carnivore diet a year before I tried it. And then I was like, oh, I want to do that. Yeah, sure. I've heard great things. Yeah, I'll jump right into that. And so I pretty much did, going from paleo to that. And I was especially excited at the fact of being able to eat milk and cheese again, because a lot of people that do paleo, they have you avoid dairy. And so that was really exciting. It's like, yes, no more vegan cheese that's really hard to melt, which is like the absolute struggle on all those plant-based cheeses. And it's kind of been, the migraines took a good while to heal. The first 6 months was really hard. I tell people it was especially hard for me because not only was I trying to heal from the migraines and just general chronic pain and inflammation, I was recovering from a gnarly car wreck, and so I had a lot going on, and I was taking muscle relaxers, and I was taking a couple of painkillers and things like that too, at the time, which I'm sure slowed the healing, but I needed it at the time to recover from the car accident. So the first month, I felt like I had a migraine the entire first month, and I was sleeping. I was taking 2-hour naps like a day, basically. And I was doing my best to eat 3 meals a day. ground beef with some eggs and cheese in the morning and a couple of steaks at night, or I would mix it up, have the steak and then some ground beef, something like that. And I just kind of pushed through. But what was changing, so I still was having the migraines. I was still, having body pains and all that. Like physically, I wasn't doing well, but this really weird thing started to happen. And what started to happen is I would have these, it would literally be like a solid hour of decent energy, but mental clarity and not be depressed or anxious. So I had been struggling with depression or anxiety since I was like 10 years old, basically. Now that what I know and everything.
Wow.
And so to have, and never experiencing a kind of peace and a kind of levity, truly having dark clouds move away and being able to see sunlight for the first time, having that kind of experience. And even though it was just for an hour, it was like, that was weird. It was genuinely something I'd never felt in my 30 years of life. And I was like, okay, this is different. Something is happening here. I'm not exactly getting the results that I want, but I'm getting something. And I think that something means that I should keep doing this, Yeah. The next month after that, the migraines got a little bit better. It wasn't every day, it was kind of more back to the once a week or so. But this feeling of the birds singing and the clouds being lifted and the seeing sunshine for the first time, that feeling started to expand out. So I remember it being so gradual. It was like 1 hour a day, then like 3 hours a day, and then 6 hours a day, and then a half day. And that was really exciting, a half day of feeling good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so crazy. And then an entire day, and then an entire week. And it's just, so it was super gradual to me, that change. And now I have entire, couple of weeks, 3 months, everyone has things that happen in a given week or a given month that, gets you down, you get knocked down and things like that. But the thing I feel like with the carnivore diet is you kind of have this, in movies, they call it the protagonist shield, where it's like the world's kind of crumbling around them, but they get to escape unscathed. I feel that the longer you're carnivore or being carnivore, because your body's greatly reduced inflammation, even the emotional stressors and the mental stressors of life, they don't completely take you out. When you're a person that suffers with depression and anxiety, every setback feels like this is it, like it's the end of the world, or even worse, that this is going to totally do me in. It's like you're not going to be able to recover. On carnivore, though, you can get some bad news. You can go through some stressful situations, and you might be down. Your mood may be down, but it's not that catastrophe. And to me, I feel like that's a big difference, and that's why I really like doing the coaching and working with people with addiction and mental health issues, because having done classical therapy with people, without the diet being in place, without the inflammation in the mind and body being reduced, I can give a person all the breathing techniques, all the mindfulness techniques, the journaling, the cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance therapy, watch the clouds, look at your thoughts as though they're clouds and let them drift away. I can give them all that. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I love therapy, but it's so much more effective with the change in diet, and more specifically, a low carb, zero carb carnivore diet. And I'd been in therapy several times, and it helps. Don't get me wrong, it definitely helps, but it's not this, you've got to keep going. People's medication becomes therapy, which in my opinion is better than medication proper. But how did we get here? All the millions of years that humans have been around. We look at even grandparents, right, or great grandparents, and the struggles that they went through, and it's like, how did they survive? And it's like, none of that makes sense, or at least it never made sense to me. Or I felt that I'm so genetically flawed, I'm so bad that I would have just died like immediately, having, not been born in the modern world. But after the carnivore diet and experiencing it, it's like, oh, that makes sense why people were able to, just pick up a wagon and move from one side of the country to the other, with kids and all that. I mean, I'm still something I wouldn't sign up for, but if you can go hunt, if you can go hunting and all that stuff, you got the right diet, you have that kind of energy to go and, let's go explore this unexplored part of the nation, where there's, maybe Indians and other people and bears and who you don't know, right? It's just, it was crazy to me until the carnivore diet, and everything else just kind of clicked into place. So now currently, I get the occasional headache, but, maybe pain level 6 or a 7 if I'm being really bad. And when I say really bad, I mean, not eating carnivore properly, going to go have that extra cup of coffee, or, eating some fruit that I really shouldn't because it spikes the blood sugar. All those things that all of us find ourselves doing from time to time. It's not about being perfect. It's about being better than yesterday. And so when that happens, though, I mean, I either need beef, salt, or sleep to get rid of the migraine, basically. Either I've, botched my sleep, stayed up too late, whatever. Or again, gone too far off eating away from zero carb carnivore, or I've, not taken in enough salt for that day, which the angiostatin protocol, the theory is that the migraines are a electrolyte imbalance, which affects the neurons. The neurons can't jump, the dendrites or whatever they're called, start malfunctioning, become inflamed, cause a cascading effect through the nervous system, which is why people end up with the vomiting, to the aura, to all the tiredness, the myriad of symptoms that encompass having a migraine disorder, vertigo for some, which I do not feel, which I feel my heart goes out to people with vertigo because I've experienced that a handful of times. And I think I'd rather have a migraine proper with pain rather than vertigo with the world spinning and you're not able to catch your balance. It's just a horrible feeling. And so that's the cascade. So that's why I'm talking so much about salt, and there's ratios and everything in her book. I'm not going to go into here, but the keeping those electrolytes are really important for those with what Angela describes as the migraine brain. It's kind of like a brain that's kind of on overdrive, in that we intake more information than the average brain. And that doesn't mean we're smarter or better or anything like that. It's just, that's why I wear these blue blockers, because this light is a little intense for me. I do kind of feel it. Will it give me a migraine? Not necessarily, but it's kind of uncomfortable, because I feel my brain just kind of overstimulated. It's a kind of very similar to, I think, autism as well, that overstimulation, the sensory stimulation. I think all of these are related, and we know the metabolic theory of disease, all these kind of chronic pain, autoimmune issues seem to stem from metabolic disorders. So when I did some testing, I was reactive hyperglycemic. So I would go up, down, after eating something. And so, even me, and I don't know if this is recorded video, if anyone's going to see me, or it's purely audio, but maybe you can describe, or I can describe, I'm 5'7", I'm like 140 pounds. So walking out normally, now before carnivore, I was like 155. So my weight hasn't really changed that much. But I was the skinny fat. which people hear about, right? So even me, a person that everywhere I went, oh my goodness, you're so skinny. I constantly caught skinny. You need to eat more, all that stuff. I was metabolically just, had metabolic dysfunction, so you can't look at somebody and determine their level of health or metabolic function until some actual testing is done or you look at their diet. And just to kind of go on that same kind of vein, I mean, I would go to the doctor, every 6 months, sometimes every 3 months because of a sinus infection. I would get up to 6 a year, ended up having sinus surgery and my sinuses actually extracted. So I'm kind of afraid of busting a Michael Jackson in one day and my nose is going to fall off. So I went and was always compliant with doctors. I had blood tests and all this stuff, and my bloods always came back stellar. I think the only thing I ever came back low on was vitamin D. And I'm always telling people, because people worry about, certain metrics and certain blood tests and things like this on this diet. And the message I try to tell them is, look, I had stellar bloods my entire life, and I get it. I'm young, so I should, right? But I was sick. I couldn't hold down a full-time job. It was really difficult, So it's like I could walk into a job offer or an interview and throw my labs on the desk and be like, hey, look how healthy I am, but then end up having to call out the next couple of days because I have a migraine. That's not worth anything. That's not actual improvement. That's not real health, just numbers. Now that there are some, numerical markers that are important, but now that I'm carnivore and I can, work a full-time job and, do interviews or all the, I've got so many things I like to do in different, I'm living life. I'm living the life I should have been living 13 years ago, when I was 20, when I got hit with those severe chronic migraines. And I don't worry about my bloods. Yeah, I go once a year and I've gotten, and I get the finger wagging the talk from the doctor about my cholesterol, of course, right? But everything, my vitamin D is great. My minerals are great. Everything else is stellar. My weight, my muscle mass to my weight ratios are fantastic, which I think is so important. Because when I started carnivore and I threw in a little bit of fasting, I dropped as low as like 131 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went from about 155 to 131. And I was like almost emaciated skinny, and I looked too skinny. But I started to hit the gym. I actually didn't change what I ate. I ate the same, which has been about 2 pounds a day. But now I'm muscular. I've packed on muscle. So yeah, I've gained 14 pounds roughly, but that's muscle,
awesome.
Which great. Is like crazy cool. I'm a nerdy kind of guy. I'm into Yu-Gi-Oh and anime. So I'm not, I've never been like a big meathead. Yeah, I did cross country and track, as in high school, but I was never like varsity or anything like that. So I've never really considered myself to be like a big, physical jock or anything like that. I'm a total geek. And even with me being, a geek, a nerd, whatever, a dork, I like hitting the gym now. I like going in there and working out. I've got, you can't see behind me, but, I've got weights and stuff like that. And I really enjoy it. And so it's like, I think people, not saying that you shouldn't, but I think people gravitate towards those hobbies and, labels and identity and things like that. Right. And so it's like, maybe that was just a coping mechanism. Like I still love all that nerdy stuff. I'll still talk at comic books, all that stuff, obviously. But, your physical health is important. Like it's so important. It's so much more important than the newest DVD or the newest movie or whatever comic book. You're watching people that are crazy fit, do action films when it's like, yeah, maybe you're not going to get to that level, but you can get closer to that side. Instead of watching action heroes, you can become much closer to being your own action hero in your own life.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned. And it's crazy cool. And I know I've been jumping around a lot, so maybe I'll let you ask some questions to maybe fill in some gaps that maybe what the audience would like to know.
This episode is brought to you by LMNT Electrolytes. We know that salt, potassium, and magnesium are essential minerals, especially for those on carnivore, keto, and low-carb diets to relieve hunger, dizziness, cramps, headaches, and keep so many of your bodily processes running optimally, including sleep, brain and mental health, hormonal health, your heart, immunity, and more. LMNT electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious. My wife and I have been using LMNT for years, every single day. They're great for fueling hard workouts, getting adapted and beating keto flu, fasting, traveling with them, and kickstarting your day with energy. They're used by Navy SEALs, Olympic weightlifters, jiu-jitsu athletes, and everyday people who want to make themselves better, like you and me. They're also founded by superhero Rob Wolf. LMNT is offering free, that's right, free people, LMNT sample packs to Carnivore Cast listeners. All you have to do is pay for shipping. Go to drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast to claim this awesome deal. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, one word, and I'll include a link in the show notes. That's great, Justin. That was perfect, and really appreciate you sharing your story and your struggles. I can't imagine. My mother struggles with migraines, and it's just completely debilitating. Takes her out for hours and days at a time. And so it must have completely transformed your life. And one thing I'm hearing over and over again as you talk is this newfound vigor for life that you have, just in so many different ways. It really shines through. And I guess I wanted to ask about your handle, the all out life carnivore. Is that where that kind of came from, or how did you come up with that?
Yeah. So my favorite band. So not only am I a huge geek, but I'm also a huge metalhead. Okay. So I love, Korn, Slipknot, Slayer, like 80s thrash, Megadeth. I love all that stuff. It's my favorite go-to kind of music. And so the year I went carnivore in 2019, Slipknot also released a single called All Out Life. And so because of that album and that single, I just decided to name myself the All Out Life Carnivore. And I feel like it fits because it's what I'm about. It's like, it's all about just living life, grab life by the horns, grab it by the bull, all that kind of attitude, and I wanted that kind of attitude to come across because I'm passionate about life now. So even before carnivore or anything, I've always wanted to be like a motivational speaker. And what do motivational speakers do? They inspire, but they inspire not just with words, they inspire with energy. They have that get up and go. They make you want to get up and do something after you listen to them and change something and make a difference and right? And so that's the kind of energy I like to bring, especially in these interviews, but even in coaching and stuff, because I remember those days of being in hours wasted or being, debilitated and not having a lust for life. And, dark days and nights, like for real. I've been to some really, really dark places for sure, as many people do. And yeah, I mean, they're still there. Don't get me wrong. We all wrestle with daily demons. But I feel that now I have like an advocate or myself to depend on. I can trust myself now that even if I make a poor decision or do something dumb or get some bad news, that I can pull myself up. I can pull myself out of that. And if I can't on my own, I've also met an amazing group of people in the carnivore community. I'm home. Like I have a family that I never expected, that like the carnivore community, many of us talk daily, I'm on a podcast. I'm a co-host of a podcast called The Meat Mosaic, and me and a few of them, we keep in touch like every day. And one of them's even on Australia, right? So they're so far away, and yet we're so connected. And the carnivore community is so cool. And it's like, I'm home. Yeah, we have our disagreements. Yeah, we might bicker about things, but at the end of the day, I pretty much love everybody in this community. And And that's whether, you're on your first day or you've been in it for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's about conscious eating and it's about attempting to make that change. So I coach some people with some serious food addiction and they slip up, and I don't judge them for it. I'm just like, as long as you continue to crawl or take steps on this journey, I will have your back and I will walk with you side by side. And if you need a hand up, I will give you a hand up. And I feel that that's my job as their coach. My job is not to judge them. My job isn't to tell them they did it wrong. My job isn't to remind them of what they ate or anything like that. My job is to, if they want it, inspire them and tell them that they can do it and walk with them on that journey.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And I was going to ask how you approach coaching. And it sounds like you're doing all the right things. I'm sitting here just nodding my head. But one thing I wanted to ask is, with regards the mental aspects of carnivore and the effect on mental health has always fascinated me. I've always said that, the physical transformations are incredible. They're life-changing and I wouldn't diminish them for anything, but the mental transformations, absolutely baffle me. People who have, tried all these prescription drugs for anxiety, for OCD, for stress, for depression, and none of it has worked, but somehow carnivore diet has worked. I don't know if it's, food inflammation. I don't know if it's regulating dopamine from getting rid of the sugar spikes. I don't know, but it seems to work incredibly well. So I'm curious, as a MeatRx coach, your clientele are probably somewhat self-selecting. They're coming to you, they're bought into the carnivore diet to an extent. But I guess if someone comes to you, how do you get them comfortable with the idea, or how do you get them psyched up about the idea and convince them that this diet can have those mental effects on them? And how do you get them to take that leap of faith with you?
Right. So, usually the people I get have heard my story. So they listen to a podcast like yours or other people's and things like that. So they hear my story or other people's stories. So they're kind of primed in general. But it's just getting over that hump of, well, that's them, but there's no way that could happen to me. Right. And so it's, going over the story again, kind of in more detail, really kind of, and even in any kind of coaching or psychological treatment, it's about building that rapport, building in that trust, right? And if you can hit them with a piece of information that really kind of snaps and resonates with them, or they resonate with a real part of your story, then they get that buy-in, it kind of is a leap of faith. No matter how in detailed a person describes their story, or going from, depression, anxiety, even bipolar and schizophrenia, things like that the people have recovered from due to a low carb or carnivore diet. When you're on the other side, it seems unreachable, just like everything else in their life. So that's not different. What it is either a stage of desperation. But the most important thing to do is to not lie to them. You know what I mean? I'm straight up telling them, hey, listen, your first 3 months are probably going to suck. You know what I mean? Because they're used to disappointment. And so they're like, okay, this must be real, because he's telling me that in the beginning, this is not going to be great, and it's just being honest with them about the experience and how hard it's going to be. That's in really that smart aspect. And keeping it as, okay, so, you have depression. Well, that's not you. You know what I mean? That's a part of you. And and I can get into the psychological aspects, but, things like, I'll tell them about things like introjections. So in interpersonal psychotherapy, you have what's called introjections, which eventually become, in cognitive behavioral therapy, automatic negative thought patterns, basically, and schemas and core beliefs and things like that. And oftentimes, and I know it's cliche, but I oftentimes take my clients back to childhood. You know what I mean? Do you remember the first cookie or cake you had? What was going on? Oh, I grew up in a house with domestic violence, and after beating on my mom for 10 minutes, my mom would take me out of the house to go get ice cream. It's like, that's significant. You have no idea. And they've been carrying that memory around, and they'll remember these things in 4K, high resolution, high def detail, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you know when a person is like, that's ingrained. And what happens is that with memories like that, when it's ingrained, it moves forward and it becomes not just the narrative of their life, but the narrative of their biology. Mm-hmm. Everything is based upon that moment. And so when they, and not saying this is stuff that gets done in the first session, obviously not, but my clients that are severely addicted to food and things like that generally comes back to a memory like that, and reconciling their issues with their parents, reconciling it within themselves, reconciling, relationships and things like that. So the cure to addiction is communication, relationship, connection.
Yeah.
And so what I try to do is be the first authentic, true, non-abandoning, what is it? Not backhanded, but just a relationship where I'm genuinely interested in your well-being. Mm-hmm. And I'm not about controlling you. I'm not about manipulating you.
No ulterior motives.
Right, exactly. No ulterior motives. Because many people, especially those that struggle with addiction or some other, mental health issue, sadly, unfortunately, most of the people in their lives are manipulative or blaming, or they're the scapegoat. And that isn't to say that they have no responsibility for where they're at, but I think it's genuinely accepted that before the age of 18, roughly, you're kind of either have less responsibility or no responsibility for what happens. Certainly not an 8-year-old, right? I think most 5, things like that. And so I try to instill them that, like, you're here, but you didn't get here by yourself, because they oftentimes feel so bad because of where they're at, mentally and all this stuff that, and so what happens is because guilt and shame has to go somewhere, and punishment. And if it doesn't go on the perpetrators, those of us that are more aware, we're kind of like sponges, and we end up taking on way too much guilt, way too much responsibility for what's happened to us in life. And so that's how they get here. And what I try to do is untangle that and be like, no, it's not entirely like that. You're taking on way entirely too much responsibility. And they'll oftentimes do the same patterns in their work life and with their eating and all that stuff. And it's like, are you looking to get relief, or are you looking to get punishment? And it's like they can be in that zone for so long, though, that punishment is the relief. Yeah. Until they don't have hardly anything, any more relationships and things like that. And so just rebuilding and things like that. But, it's a classic saying, but, people aren't ready until they're ready. So, I totally take my ego and myself out of it. You know what I mean? I'm simply a conduit of information and my energy, and hopefully something will stick, and hopefully they'll want to make the change. But I know I have no magic words. I know I have no magic shirt. I know there's nothing that's going to get them over that line aside from themselves. And every time they take that step, I make sure I encourage them, be like, you did that. I had nothing to do with that. You did it, because they've got to feel that, that empowerment, if you will, that feeling of self-trust, that self-esteem, that, oh, wow, I stuck to it for 5 days. Awesome. You stuck to it for 5 days. That's amazing. Yeah, you fell off towards the weekend or whatever, but this coming week, let's try 6 days.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I can tell you're not only incredibly thoughtful about how you approach this and how you work with people, but also very well researched and well read. And not only that, it's not just for the sake of, sounding smart or spitting facts, like you're actually learning it to apply it to yourself and others. And I think that's so, so cool, Justin. And really just like, I'm so grateful for you sharing your story and the work you're doing to help other people. I think we need more and more people like you in this community. It's really infectious in a good way. I'm feeling super inspired, and I'm sure the audience will be too. Where can they find out more about you, link up with you if they want to? And I'll, of course, have everything in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So alloutlife.carnivore on Instagram is probably the easiest place. There's also a little Facebook page there too. I got like 200 subscribers or something. A little Facebook place. I'm also on minds.com if there's those that are more on alternative platforms. All Out Life Carnivore on minds.com if any of your audience happens to be on there. So yeah, I'm in a few different places, but allmylinks.com, I believe / All Out Life Carnivore has all my links to all my stuff as well. So
awesome.
Pick whichever you want to go. alloutlife.carnivore@gmail.com. You can email me. I'll hit you back. That's also a great way to get in touch with me, and I'll do what I can. So here's the thing: I have no set fee. I work purely on donations because I want to be able to reach and work with as many people as are. And I hate setting prices. Wow. So the way I see it is, you pay me what you believe this half hour, 2 hour was worth to you.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. Well, keep up the great work. Thanks again so much for coming on, Justin. Really appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Awesome. Take care.
If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered? Or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Carnivore Cast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.